Alright folks, how you doing? So, if you want to know what's happening with the West at the moment, particularly the fate of America, I recommend that you go and study the old philosopher Plato. And this is from the Wikipedia page talking about Plato's 5 regimes. It goes into aristocracy, timocracy, oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny. Now, not to become too long-winded and confusing, I'll simply skip down to the final 2 stages. And according to Plato, if you've actually studied him, which I have because I'm actually intelligent, you will realize that every society basically goes through these 5 stages in a cycle, essentially. So let's see what he says here about democracy. Oligarchy then degenerates into a democracy where freedom is the supreme good, but freedom is also slavery. What does that mean? Well, how long can you go without picking up your iPhone? In democracy, the lower class grows bigger and bigger. The poor become the winners. People are free to do what they want and how they want. People can even break the law if they choose. Does that sound familiar with America these days? Cities like the blue states where everyone's running, the mass exodus to red states like Texas, for example. This appears to be very similar to anarchy, to the point that nobody can tell the difference. Plato uses the democratic man to present democracy. The democratic man is the son of the oligarchic man. Unlike his father, the democratic man is consumed with unnecessary desires. Does this sound familiar? Because it should. Your Xbox, your PlayStation 5. Plato describes necessary desires as desires that have out of instinct or desires that we have to survive. Unnecessary desires are desires we can teach ourselves to resist, such as the desire for riches. I want to be a pop star. I want to be a singer. I want to go on American Idol. Blah, blah, blah. The democratic man takes great interest in all things he can buy with his money. Plato believes that the democratic man is more concerned with his money over how he can help the people. Absolutely. He does whatever he wants, whenever he wants to do it. His life has no order or priority. Think about that when you look around today's society. Plato does not believe that democracy is the best form of government, and quite frankly, neither do I. In fact, it's probably the worst. According to him, equality brings power-seeking individuals who are motivated by personal gain. Power-seeking individuals who are motivated by personal gain is a long-winded way of saying narcissists. That's exactly what they are. Remember in previous videos I've talked about the narcissistic society. That's exactly what it is. Democracy breeds narcissism. They can be highly corruptible, and this can eventually lead to tyranny. I would eliminate that word can and replace it with will. This form of government is unstable and it lacks leaders with proper skills or morals. Think about the last president of the United States that you admired. I'll be sitting over here waiting. Without able and virtuous leaders who come and go, if you think America has any of those, you're having a fucking laugh. It is not a good form of government. He sees democracy as dangerous as it motivates the poor against wealthy rulers. Well, what are we seeing with all these riots and things? The peaceful protests on CNN with the city burning down behind them. It prioritizes wealth and property accumulation. And then you get into tyranny. Democracy then degenerates into tyranny where no one has discipline and society exists in chaos. Remember, this is thousands of years ago this was written, Plato's Republic. Democracy is taken over by the longing for freedom. Power must be seized to maintain order. A champion will come along and experience power, which will cause him to become a tyrant. Everyone thought this was going to be Donald Trump, but clearly that's not the case since he's no longer in power. The people will start to hate him and eventually try to remove him, but will realize that they are not able. Again, in the case of Donald Trump, they were able to remove him from power, so it doesn't really apply to him. The tyrannical man is the son of the democratic man. He is the worst form of man due to being the most unjust and thus the furthest removed from any joy of the true kind. Again, this is describing narcissism and narcissists. It's just that Plato didn't quite have the word for it. He is consumed by lawless desires which cause him to do many terrible things such as murdering and plundering. He comes closest to complete lawlessness. The idea of moderation does not exist to him. He is consumed by the basest pleasures in life. Think about that when you're talking about Instagram and all this, you know, social media. And being granted these pleasures at a whim destroys the type of pleasure only attainable through knowing pain. In other words, earning things or working towards goals, not just being handed things, you know, like the welfare state. If he spends all his money and becomes poor, the tyrant will steal and conquer to satiate his desires, but will eventually overreach and force onto himself a fear of those around him, effectively limiting his own freedom. The tyrant always runs the risk of being killed in revenge for all the unjust things he has done. He becomes afraid to leave his own home and becomes trapped inside. Therefore, his lawlessness leads to his own self-imprisonment. Plato further expands upon the unjustness that leads to misery and tyranny through the voice of Socrates when he illustrates sought-after values of three sorts. Wisdom and reason are of the highest and most just caliber of purity, for they allow a man to experience and understand the fruits of the other values while being goods in themselves. Below wisdom and reason is the pursuit of honour, and below that are the basest desires of man, those satiated by sustenance and courtesans. These base desires grant the least joy because of their attachment to pain. That is, they are only joyful when they are taken for granted. And in the case of the tyrant, who has the power to seize what he wants, those desires would always be satisfied and thus never truly satisfying. Very important point to emphasize that. So there you go. I hope you've gained something from this video, and I hope that explains what's happening in the Western world right now. Thanks for watching.